we'll go ahead and get started with our program this evening as more people join. But thank you so much all for being here tonight for tonight's crowd conversation. I'm Gretchen Worth. I'm the director of the Susan Christofferson Center for Community Planning, which supports New York State communities working toward a more equitable, climate resilient built environment. The Christofferson Center is one of the founding partners of CROWD, which, as many of you know, stands for Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development, working across New York State to forward the idea of a circular construction economy. And the Christofferson Center is the organizer of Crowd Conversations. So in May of 2024, the City of Auburn, New York, became the first New York State municipality to pass a deconstruction resolution. And tonight we're joined by Dominic Gambaini, a resident of Auburn and a stalwart crowd partner, who will share the changes he's seen in his community over the past year as a result of the passage of what was a non-binding resolution and the changes that he hopes lie ahead. Dominic's wildly successful efforts a few years ago to soft strip in record time a Denny's restaurant that was slated for demolition was, I think, the catalyst for the resolution's passage. He and his team of volunteers found homes for nearly everything that was taken out of that site, from the commercial kitchen appliances to the lighting fixtures. Following on from that experience, Dominic became instrumental in advancing Auburn's development of a circular construction economy. Dominic is a climate activist who began his foray into waste reduction as an 8-year-old recycling neighbors' leftover paint and old electronics in suburban Illinois. When a theater gig landed him in Auburn in 2019, he quickly got involved with the local climate action movement, and he became a co-founder of Cayuga Climate Action, a grassroots group of citizens committed to acting on the climate crisis throughout Cayuga County. Building off past experiences in a reuse facility in Illinois, Dominic understood the importance and benefits of a circular construction economy that includes deconstruction and building material reuse. When Dominic is not working on deconstruction, you can find him at Auburn Public Theater as the Executive Assistant Regrants Coordinator. So I'll turn it over to Dominic in just a minute, but before we get started, we have a few housekeeping details. We will keep this conversation to an hour or less, including the Q&A. And so we do welcome your questions, which we'll hold until the end. So please type them into the chat as we go along, and we'll jump right into those at the end of the conversation, at the end of the presentation. And in the meantime, please keep yourselves muted so everyone can hear the presentation. Also, if you've not already signed up, consider registering for our May and June Crowd Conversations. The May 5th event features university students from Cornell, along with high school students from Binghamton, who participate in a student-led program known as CR0WD, Cornell Undergraduate Research to Action Youth. CR0WD mobilizes local high school students to identify opportunities to work toward a more circular and sustainable built environment in their community. And then the June 2nd event features Christine O'Malley from Historic Ithaca, discussing how preservation advocacy is contributing to circular construction economy efforts in Central New York. And you can register for both those events on the CROWD website, crowd.org, CROWD with a 0 for Zero Waste Development. So we have people joining us tonight from across New York State and beyond. I'm based in Ithaca, New York, so I would like to acknowledge that Ithaca is on the traditional homelands of the Cayuga, the Cayuga Nation. The Cayuga are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Ithaca, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of Cayuga dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Cayuga people, past and present, to these lands and waters. So with that, Dominic, I will turn it over to you and stop sharing, and then you are good to go.
So let me just set this up again. And we'll start from the beginning. All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me as I bring you up to speed of what's happened the last year here in Auburn, New York. And basically, I'm going to take you through what's happened both in the private and the public sector, and where I have found myself in the community in both of those places. And then we'll obviously have time for questions. So I hope you guys are prepared to ask me some things, because yeah, uh, let's get started. So, May 2024, after a year of discussion with not just the city council, but the city planning board, the county planning board, and the public works department of the city of Auburn, we uh, saw the unanimous council support for the deconstruction resolution, which Gretchen mentioned was the first resolution of its kind in New York State, which was really, really exciting. It was the first time I had seen direct action by catalyzed by myself and my climate action group. So our deconstruction of the Denny's led to discussions with city council, the planning board, crowd, all these partners. And following a year of that, we saw a resolution passage, which was really exciting. And since then, there have been I've undertaken three more deconstructions in the private sector, and then the city of Auburn has continued to uphold its commitment to deconstruction where they are able. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that's looked like and some of the challenges, uh, both in the public and the private sector, that we continuously face, and where we go from here. So October 2024, nothing really had happened between May and October in the private sector that I had really been aware of. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call. I was in the middle of rehearsals for a play, and I was, looking forward to sleeping in. And I get a phone call at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning in October uh, by one of the people who benefited from the Denny's business deconstruction, Auburn Bagel Company. And the owner, Tony, called me and said, "You need to get down here. There's a dumpster, and they're just chucking all kinds of stuff that people I know can use, and myself included. So get down here. Like I'll help you get in there and all that." So I ran downstairs to my car, drove to downtown, started parking, immediately started pulling things out of the dumpster, quickly introduced myself to the developer who I luckily had known because he's a legislator, but also a friend of the theater, and said, what do you need gone? What is the timeline of this demolition? Because as you can see in the picture, it was a old bank lobby. So basically, in order to make the building more viable for reuse, in terms of new businesses and offices and whatnot, they're demolishing the bank lobby because obviously a building with a bank lobby is very much, it looks like a bank lobby no matter what you do. So they had to demo all of that. And at the same time, they were pulling out all the old furniture that was left by the bank to basically allow for a blank slate inside. So I figured out what was needed to immediately, what I could post for later, and just started, pulling things out of the dumpster. Like I said, all the artwork I went on the curb, and people walking up and down. Luckily, it was still really sunny, really nice out. Downtown was packed. People were literally just taking the artwork off the street. So I learned that, soft stripping, curbs can be your friend, and Facebook is really important. I connected to several teachers, nonprofits, and local businesses who were open, in downtown, and they came over and they took what they were needed to do. So my experience with that, the benefits were I was seeing, in real time what was possible, and the challenges were obviously the timing. And this goes back to my presentation last year where I really realized that timing is really important to the success of any deconstruction or reuse of any building. So this could have been a bigger project where a dumpster was avoided completely, which would have saved the developer money. However, some things were already, chucked and ruined, so we weren't able to salvage everything. And again, the developer was interested in the soft stripping, but there were interior structural pieces of the lobby that probably also could have been reused that were not. So this was successful in the fact that it got a letter to the editor in the local paper. The Citizen of Auburn was really stoked about this. People were really excited about it when they heard about it. and they were glad to see that these office chairs, these conference tables, velvet ropes, all of these items were not sent to a landfill and they were able to be reused within the community. And that takes us to another downtown deconstruction happened at the Genesee Mall, which if you look in the photo is the south building. You'll see MG as a logo and next chapter as the logo on the right. And that whole building is the Genesee Mall. And so again, I don't think this would have happened if there wasn't that visibility with the October project with the Key Bank, old Key Bank building, because I was notified over Facebook uh, inquiring if I was interested and up for helping find homes for several office space, office cubicles spaces worth of materials. So this building it's a mall, so there's multiple storefronts, and one of the back storefronts was being renovated, is currently being renovated still, into a local gaming community hangout space for after school kids to give them a place to go and give them something to do. So what had happened is all these dental cubicles were stripped. And when you think of a dentist office, you have cabinets, you have sinks, you have office chairs, you have desks and countertops. And so all these were put into a closet, a large closet, and the developer, was fortunate enough to have a friend of the theater. So again, this is all about, making connections with local businesses and local people. And she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have a friend who's renovating," and I told him to hold all this stuff because I know you can find a home for it, which I was able to. Again, thank you to Facebook and social media. And because unfortunately, this was a longer period of time. Unfortunately and fortunately, it wasn't like a come grab it all right now. It was a contact me and I'll connect you with the guy, and then you guys set up a time to meet. And again, we were successful in finding homes for a lot of materials that were he was going to throw out. And again, the timeline of this, if people had known that there was this opportunity of need in the community, more could have been salvaged. So all the 2x4s, all of the electrical conduit, all the materials that, we don't necessarily think of when you think of a saw stripping, but can include and can be included in a saw stripping, were unfortunately wasted. And, that was unfortunate because they were good 2x4s and they were able to be, they could have been reused again if you if people had known that there was the avenue to get rid of them. So this was really successful in the fact that I started to connect the dots of, oh, people are starting to see me in the community as this person who facilitates. And they know if there's a project where they don't want to throw things out, Dom's your guy. So it was great to see that kind of growth. Um, but again, I wish I had known about the project before the project happened, because there was things that could have been saved that wouldn't have ended up in a landfill otherwise. But not nobody's perfect, and not every project can be, you know, executed in a manner that requires a deconstruction. Um, Currently, I am currently working on the Hilton Garden Inn. So every 10 years, any Hilton property in the world gets a renovation. All the rooms get renovated. So the Hilton Garden Inn in Auburn has 92 rooms. This was again a word of mouth where this contractor knew what was needed to be thrown out and said, absolutely not. That's a lot of expense on my end to throw all this out. And it's the Hilton Garden Inn. It had just opened in 2016. So these items literally are 10 years old. They're nice. It's very good quality wood, furnishings, pictures, chairs, all of this stuff. And so I was given a call and they said, I was recommended to call you. I know you, I've heard that you know where things can go and that are not landfills. So I decided to take on the role. It was a big undertaking, 92 rooms, and I was very adamant about not letting anything go to the landfill. I wanted the challenge, and I knew that we had a longer timeline. And I was involved first stages of the process, which was super important because I was able to walk through not only with the contractor, but with the property manager, with the owner, with the architect, and walk through all the plans for the renovation and what was needed to go and what was staying and what the timeline was because every floor was done separately. So we started with the fourth, went down to the first, did the third, and the second one is starting on Friday. So this was a big opportunity, but I was able to be at the beginning, which I was very grateful for because I was able to immediately run up, start the ground running and call people. And I was able to have a breakdown of what was available to the T. So I knew how many queen beds, how many king beds, how many sofa beds, how many, you know, ottomans, how many mirrors, how many closet doors, how many lampshades, all these things that usually, in my experience, have come after the building's already slated for demolition. And luckily, this was just a retrofitting. So again, we had that timeline. So I started calling, I called about probably 25, 30 people and was able to find homes for almost all 92 rooms. There was a couple of issues along the way with space where things, deliveries and pickups weren't able to synchronize, and so some materials were lost to a landfill. However, an overwhelming majority, I would say 90% of the materials in this Hilton Garden Inn were safely redistributed to the larger community at hand. And that included the beds, which I was really, really proud of because I was able to hand deliver some of the beds to lower income Lombardians who did not have beds at all. And that was really great to see these items that were, written off as, well, they're 10-year-old beds, like we're throwing them away. And I was like, they're fine, they're clean, like it's a hotel, like no one's like jumping on the bed. Um, so I was able to find homes for all of those beds in the rooms, as well as the closet doors, the lighting fixtures, all of that. So really what was landfill in the rooms were the tile, the wallpaper, and the carpeting, and everything else I was able to find homes for. Again, this is a larger opportunity, the largest opportunity I've had to see this uh, on a local scale. And again, you really see that it's just a matter of calling the right people and getting them all in the same room and all connected so that you can make these um, deconstruction and reuse opportunities happen for your community. And that was kind of it. I'm going to add something in that I just remembered as I was talking about this. This was not anything I was related involved in, but a local brewery was downsizing some equipment. And I don't know if this was influenced by me at all or by Cayuga Climate Action or the resolution or what we've been doing, but the owner took to Facebook to say, I have all these materials. The building's open from 2 to 4 this Saturday, like first come, first serve, just come grab it out. And the community responded. So again, getting the word out, people will take things and people will utilize you know, this like kind of like Facebook Marketplace reuse place. So yeah, that there's been a lot of really good activity, and I feel in my gut that it's all connected because everyone's talking about this constantly, especially with Auburn Bagel Co. and Auburn Public Theater and Cafe 108 and these really prominent businesses and business leaders in downtown are continuously talking about where they got their booths and where they got their plates. So back to the city support has been as strong as they are able to. Obviously, the city of Auburn faces many other challenges that are unrelated to this resolution, and this resolution is a non-binding resolution. There's not really a timeline for progressing deconstruction within the community. However, Proud, myself, and Cayuga Climate Action were reached out in regards to several properties that were city owned because a really great um, next step is having a deconstruction of a city owned property so it can be an education moment for local contractors, the public, and they can kind of tie it all together as to what they're trying to do. Um, two of the buildings we were able to walk through, unfortunately, were so condemned that it really illustrated to me that there's a limit to deconstruction and reuse. When something's not fit for human habitation, like you can't utilize the deconstruction as a pathway, right? There is still, standards in the reuse economy that we have to uphold. Again, this is a timing issue as well because, you know, while the interior and the some of the exteriors were not able to be salvaged, there were 16 double hung windows that were salvageable. And basically there was not enough time to even figure out how they were salvageable. The good news is the city was considering this and invited us in. So we were able to walk through and say, hey, here's what we would actually be able to salvage, which to them was news. And they were like, okay, that's good to know going forward. There's a three-story building that's an ongoing project on State Street in Auburn. It's an old Polish home. It's being torn down and turned into housing, affordable housing. And it's a future project because all the partners, Housing Visions, City of Auburn, us, and Crowd, we're all still engaging in conversation of how we can salvage some of the materials inside this three-story building. And so again, it's getting all the people involved from the get-go so that you're not having a crunch time. And I really think within the next 6 months, we'll see some progress with pulling and salvaging materials before the building comes down. There's just a couple of, extraneous loose threads that need to be tied up before we're able to do that. But it's really great to see that the city of Auburn passed this resolution and is not just saying, okay, we did it, we're washing our hands, we're done, but they're committing to these ongoing conversations, these learning curves, and connecting with the community at large on how deconstruction can basically revitalize the way we think about waste. I'm going to end with a little bit of my role because the Hilton Garden Inn was really a wake-up call, not only to myself, but to my family, who's been very vocally supportive. That, my role as a facilitator is probably the way to go moving forward. I don't think that Auburn is ready for a reuse facility at the moment, at least a privately run one. I think there's still some conversations to be had about the city landfill transfer station's role in accepting some salvage materials. Um, but being a facilitator, making the calls so you can connect people to these projects and say, hey, I have 92 doors. When can you get here? Let's schedule together. We'll work with the contractor, all of that. And I've realized that that's a business opportunity. So my goal for this year is to start my own LLC and to start hopefully making some money so that it's no longer just a volunteer passion project, but this is a real thing that people can take seriously and that I can expand to other projects and not just hear about it on the fly or post about it on Facebook, or this is something I can connect with, kind of like the Hilton Garden Inn from the get-go with these developers. And I can be the person who says, here's what I can do, let me work my magic. And then at the end, we'll talk about, sharing the savings of the landfill fees that you avoided. And so that's kind of where I've been finding myself as these projects continue to show up on my lap. And then I'm committed to continually growing the deconstruction mission around the region. I'm proud to say that Auburn's no longer the only municipality in New York State that has passed a resolution. The community of Dryden has most recently, I believe 2 months ago, passed a deconstruction resolution. And what's really interesting and exciting about that is not only did their council approve this, but they want to see a community engagement, not only with their local community, but within the regional network. And so I think my role in the volunteer sector with the public sector, with Cayuga Climate Action and Crowd, is to now put the pressure on other municipalities so that now they can all work together to figure out how the best way to move forward is. And maybe that's creating a marketplace of reuse where they can share directly with each other. Again, maybe it's using a portion of their transfer stations as a drop off and pickup site. Um, you know, but I'm definitely doubling down on making those conversations happen because I think as we as a region face more landfill closures, that this work is only going to get more important and more crucial to uh, not only saving our environment, but making sure we have a place to deal with all this waste. And at that point, I've talked for about 30 minutes. Um, I can definitely keep going a little bit, or we can just move right to questions. I don't know, Gretchen, what you want to do, but that's kind of all I had. Um, it was kind of everything's kind of just been, going good, I guess, from several viewpoints. And I think the city, is still committed, which is great. And I think the private sector is starting to really not only feel the pressures of, okay, well, I need to cut my costs. The landfill cost seems like a very obvious answer. But the region itself is facing pressures of the closing landfills, and we need a different model of how to deal with all these projects, and deconstruction offers a way. So
So thank you, Dominic. So please, if you do have a question, type it in the chat or raise your hand. I have a few questions to
yeah,
kick us off. And so I'm wondering, in terms of the non-binding resolution. So as we've mentioned, both Auburn and the town of Dryden's resolutions are non-binding, but they have catalyzed important conversations and raised awareness, as Dominic has just mentioned. So Dominic, I'm curious if you were to, go before city council in Auburn or have a meeting with the planning department for the city of Auburn, what are some of the things that you would recommend for them to do in terms of next steps to move forward, just beyond the resolution? And I am acknowledging that they have been, I think, quite they've been, of course, very supportive, but they have been in contact whenever there's a demolition permit that's being applied for and so on, in terms of reaching out. So I think that has been a great thing that's happened. But what do you see as the next steps?
I that's a great question. I think the next steps would be, somehow incentivizing deconstruction. Not necessarily, you know, making it an ordinance, but I like to see some little carrots, whether it's like tax incentives or fast tracking of permits, um, just so that the private sector can now, and the public sector as well, can start to kind of see like, oh, no, no, they want this. We should probably start pivoting as well. Um, Definitely continue to contact us when there's demolitions. And I think I would like to see a little bit more flexibility of working with us. So when we do show up and say, oh, well, these are salvageable, and they're like, well, our timeline is tomorrow. And it's like, okay, well, how can we, get involved before it's too late so that we can't really salvage anything? And now, it's like, I'm glad we did a walkthrough, but there's not, we can't, nothing's being salvaged anyway.
Um, my next question involves just kind of pre May 2024, when the resolution was passed. And so I know you and Cayuga Climate Action and some crowd folks and city officials worked hard to move that forward. But what would you say, because there are now in central New York additional communities who are interested in potentially considering resolutions or permitting changes around deconstruction, demolition, and so on. What are some important recommendations that you would give to the communities who haven't passed a resolution, but who are thinking about it? Like what were some things that worked in Auburn really well to get to that point?
Yeah, yeah. So what worked really well to get to that point of even being in the room was having support from local businesses, nonprofits, and having them really ha allowing them to provide their testimonial so that the city council knew that this was something that the community was interested in before even sitting down to meet with us. I think that's important to have. And then I think in terms of working to get a resolution passed, I think having as many people in the room that make important decisions is the key to this success because you want to make sure that no one feels left out and you want to make sure that everyone is allowed to comment and share their opinions, that you can work together to compromise and figure out the best way forward for your community. And I think if we didn't have the county present, the planning board, the counselors, the public works facility, I don't necessarily think it would have gotten passed uh, as as the way it did. Making sure that we included those people, they felt like they weren't being blindsided by some crazy new idea or something that was going to drastically make their life in government more difficult. So definitely including as many people as you can. And then again, showing up with that evidence from the community that this is something there's need here. And you showing and illustrating to the government that you have a legitimate way to support the needs of your citizens. I think that's very important.
Um, I also had a question about the Hilton the Hilton Garden Inn. For those materials, were you able to keep them within Auburn and Cayuga County, all of them?
Uh, so a lot of them, yes, because what had happened was is I will give credit to my friend Tyler because he suggested one day because I got the call during Christmas break, so I didn't really want to think about it until after the new year. And then I finally get back to Auburn from traveling, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like 92 beds, like what? Like I don't even know what. And he was like, well, you should try and call some of the discount hotels because they'll take nicer stuff. They'll always take nicer stuff. And so I did, and I called the Auburn Inn, which is a discount hotel, and their materials are all pressed wood and very cheap bedding materials, and they're actually used by the county to house, unhoused people. So for them, it was a major upgrade. It was a major upgrade to have that connection. And so basically all we had to do was transfer it from one street to the next street. And then the rest of it went to whatever they were not able to take, because obviously their rooms are a different size, went to the rescue mission and for all their programs that they do. So so it stayed regionally and then locally as well.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, I also just want to put in a plug for Crowd and Crowd Partners, including Dominic, for anyone on the call or who's listening later to the recording, who's from a municipality in New York State that would like to discuss the idea of passing a resolution or changing the permitting process and timeline, or even passing an ordinance. And so Crowd on our website, crowd.org, has many, many resources for communities to use in terms of familiarizing themselves with this, excuse me, in terms of RFPs for deconstruction, a white paper that we've published, but importantly, the partners of Crowd, excuse me, the partners of Crowd are happy to go before a municipal common council meeting, a county legislation meeting, to to talk more and answer questions at a community level, which is a service that we provided for Auburn along with Dominic that he had organized as they were moving toward a resolution. So Crowd is happy, and one of our roles is to be a resource for communities who are considering different types of changes to how they do business as usual demolition and landfilling. So if any of you are sitting in a New York State community, please get in touch and reach out, because we would be happy to support your efforts. We're actually putting together a municipal packet, which has all sorts of different resources and very easy to use for communities that just would like a little bit more information as they're considering their next steps. Does anybody else have questions for Dominic for today? So Dominic, I would just thank you so much for this update, and for all of the work that you're doing in Auburn and Cayuga County. As I think you mentioned, we are reaching out to other municipalities in Cayuga County, kind of on the back of the Auburn resolution. So hoping to really make this a countywide effort, both in Cayuga County and also in Tompkins County, where the town of Dryden is located. So really trying to build momentum and critical mass around these two municipalities that have made the first step. So it's great to hear about the success that you're having there personally, as well as, on a community basis, and the benefits that it's bringing to so many people there. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And yeah, and it's always great to have you here and to check in on all of the exciting projects that you're working on. So thanks for your time. And thank you to
Yeah, and if
everybody.
I
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, just one final thing is, you know, um, I know I mentioned this earlier, but having that evidence before you do a resolution, I think is important. And I think, if you have friends in your life that are developers or are contractors, or you see a building and you like just want to ask a question, I think people sometimes don't even consider reuse as a viable option to dispose of their materials that they no longer need. And I think it takes one person to just say, hey, like, what are you doing with that? Can I help you get rid of that? Or, hey, I know somebody who could use that if you don't mind me like taking it from you. And then as soon as you start to build those connections, that's when I think you realize that it's just such a common sense solution to our waste that um your counselor or your municipality would be grateful to, sign on with a non-binding resolution.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope to see you for our May and June crowd conversations. And the recording for tonight should be available on the crowd site within the next week or so. So thanks again for coming, and have a good rest of your week. Thank you.